The following is a production of Natural Bliss Podcast for a better quality of life.
Hi, welcome to It's Your Life. I'm your host, Joyce Wheeler. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. Today I'm here with Heidi Feather. Her passion for herbs was sparked at an early age. She was educated about the flora and fauna of southern New Hampshire by both of her grandmothers. Her quest for herbal knowledge led her to a working apprenticeship at Wise Way Herbals. There, she was introduced to the native peoples' indigenous wisdom of the herbs and their connection to the land. Through sacred ceremonies, she went on to earn a certification in therapeutic herbalism through Blazing Star Herbal School, and also studied with Susan Weed. Heidi is also quite accomplished in the arts, both creative and esoteric. She is a level 2 Reiki practitioner, intuitive tarot reader, artist, wool spinner, all-around fiber artist, and plant dyer of wool. Plus, she is also apt at sewing and is becoming known for her tarot altar quilts, which she custom makes by hand. Heidi feels it is her mission to help bring herbal knowledge into the world. She continues to be a student of the herbs and says that herbs have taught her many lessons and they have plenty more to share. The earth is populated by plants that can bring us into wellness. It is a wondrous gift from the earth. Yet, with that gift comes responsibility. Being responsible stewards. Heidi is here to teach and share. Herbs are not meant to be exploited for profit. They are here to be used on a personal and spiritual level from one being to another. Welcome to the show, Heidi.
Thank you, Joyce. Great to be here.
Great to have you back again, one of my favorite guests.
Thank you.
So today we're speaking about something that you're dealing with personally, and that's Lyme disease.
Yes, it is something I'm definitely dealing with personally.
A lot of people are.
Yes.
There's some history behind Lyme disease. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Sure. Lyme, we have found out, or the bacteria that causes it, Borrelia burgdorferi, has been found in what we call the Iceman, who was found frozen in the Swiss Tyrolean Alps. He was carrying this bacteria. So for a long time, there was discussion that it might have been something that had been manipulated by science. There was even an article in Yankee magazine about that possibility. But with this discovery, it's definitely something that has been around for a long time. But what has happened in the last 20 to 30 years, there has been a really large outbreak of it, which started in Lyme, Connecticut, and that is why it is known as Lyme disease, because of the outbreak in Lyme in that city, where people were found ill, were coming down with these strange illnesses, and that's where it was linked to this Borrelia bacteria that has been around for a long time, and we have lived with it. But for some reason, which we can get into, it has been triggered in our bodies that it is causing a whole lot of autoimmune diseases.
So what are some ways that people could end up getting Lyme disease? Is it only through, most people, they think a tick bite.
That is one of the most common ways. And the thing is with the tick bite, the ticks have several stages that they go through. Nymph stage to the larger stage when you can recognize them as a tick. But the larva stage is so tiny that you cannot see it. And there's even reports that it can be spread by other insects.
What kind of other insects?
Possibly mosquitoes.
Somehow I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. So and there are different areas that are Lyme is found all over the world, but there are like hotspots, areas where it's really most prevalent. One of them is in the Northeast, which is where I live, the Midwest, California, and the Southeast, where you live. But it definitely is not just specific to those areas.
So, what happens after somebody's bit by a tick or mosquito or something that's carrying Lyme disease? Or do you see symptoms right away? I've always heard about looking for a bullseye.
There is this, I would call it a myth, that if you're going to get a bullseye's rash, if you've been bitten by a tick, that is a misnomer. That does not happen. That it can happen, but it doesn't happen to everybody with Lyme disease. You may have no outward symptoms at all, and you can have Lyme disease and be asymptomatic, which means you show no symptoms of it at all. In other words, your body may not even react to it. You may not ever have a problem, but you still may be carrying it within your body.
That's what I wanted to know. Is it possible for it to be like dormant, and then at a certain point in time that all of a sudden you have symptoms?
Yes, definitely. It's considered a stealth microbe. That is one of its characteristics. In other words, can hide in your cells. It can hide in specific areas. And it also forms a biofilm. So in other words, it builds a casing so it protects itself. So that is very hard to detect, even with testing. And that's what makes testing so unreliable, especially when it is chronic. It can be totally unreliable with the testing. It's very limited, especially when acute infections, you've had it for a long time, and maybe the symptoms are disappearing. Symptoms like arthritis type symptoms, maybe fibromyalgia type symptoms, and something's going on. You have a test and it comes back negative, and you tested for Lyme disease and it comes back negative. Well, the doctors or a professional may say, you don't have Lyme disease. That may not be true. Because of the stealthiness of this microbe, it could be hiding in your body, and when you test it for it, it doesn't test.
It's reminding me of mercury poisoning, because the mercury will do that. It'll hide in certain more not cells, but the organs in a person's body. So not everybody, just like with Lyme disease, what you're saying, not everybody has the same symptoms. And just like Lyme disease, mercury poison is often misdiagnosed because the symptoms that someone has, like with my husband, they mimic something else.
Exactly. And testing is dependent on your body producing antibodies in a chronic infection. That is what happens. And if those antibodies are not present and it's kind of like an dormant stage, then you're not going to test for Lyme disease.
And that's the same thing with mercury.
Right. And like I said, a negative test does not exclude the possibility of that microbe being present.
Right.
Especially when you're in the throes of a chronic illness like fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis.
And when I was looking at Lyme disease, I've heard that people who are diagnosed with those two issues often actually have Lyme disease.
Exactly. Most testing is a species specific, so that they're looking for just one species of the Borrelia. And there are numerous species, and they're actually finding newer ones all the time. Within the last 5 to 10 years, they've come up with new species of Borrelia, and it's not always the Borrelia that is present. There's other microbes that can add to that, like Rocky Mountain spotted fever is one that often goes hand in hand. So in other words, the Borrelia doesn't travel alone, so it can travel with other microbes.
Oh, wow.
Such as chlamydia, mycoplasma, and other types. So it's not just a single microbe that's causing the problem. So you can see where this and it's found pretty much everywhere. There are
Right.
ticks. It's just what I said. There are hot spots, but that doesn't mean it's not around in those areas.
So, what kind of testing do they do for Lyme? Are they testing the blood? What are the urine?
Usually it's a blood test, and it's usually extremely expensive.
Hmm.
It can run into thousands of dollars, and it's often not covered by insurance.
I heard that. I'm sitting here and I'm kind of wondering, if there's somebody who's listening to this and thinking to themselves, maybe I have Lyme disease, maybe it's not fibromyalgia, or maybe it's not this, or maybe it's not that. What prevalent symptoms can people look for to know for sure that, or have a good idea that it's probably Lyme disease?
Before I go into the symptoms of Lyme disease, that some people can have a Lyme type disease without the Borrelia microbe being present. So in other words, it can be a combination of the other microbes that are causing the symptoms. So the things to note about the symptoms of Lyme disease is the way that it affects people. It can infect people in so many different ways. It all depends on your body ecology and the way that your body is specifically acting with that bacteria.
Right.
So the most symptoms are chronic fatigue, which I suffered from a lot in the beginning, migrating arthritis, joint pain, muscle pain, chronic back pain and disc degeneration, chronic flu-like symptoms, headache, neck stiffness and creaking, Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis, brain fog, decreased cognitive function, noise and sound intolerance, ringing in the ears, disturbed sleep, blurry vision, floater's eye discomfort, eye pain, tooth pain, dizziness and instability, which I had that in the very beginning, muscle twitching, which includes burning, tingling in the feet and hands, tremor, heads and hands, chest pain, irregular heartbeat, shortness of breath, catching breath, unstable bladder, gastrointestinal dysfunctions. And some of what we have listed as diseases are fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. Any autoimmune disease may be traced to these microbes that cause Lyme disease.
That also parallels mercury poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
So from that we can see how many people end up being misdiagnosed
Oh, absolutely.
because the symptoms you're talking about, and even like the mercury symptoms, can easily be something else.
Can easily be something else.
So, how did you find out for sure that it was Lyme disease?
My story, I think, is typical. I live in the Northeast. I'm an herbalist. I'm outside, have been outside a lot, what I would call bushwhacking, going into the thicker brush. So I actually noticed a tick on me and I put clay on it right away, which is, I will get into that later. But this is what happened to me because just something told me to put clay on it, which was a good move, by the way.
What does the clay do?
It helps draw that stuff out.
Gotcha.
So, but I didn't know the other component, which I will talk about later. I got bit by the tick and I knew something wasn't, I just had this weird feeling, but this rash started spreading out from it. And it wasn't a bullseye's rash, but it was a rash. I went to the doctor right away because even as an herbalist, we need to have a diagnosis to work with. So I went to the doctor and she was pretty sure by the look of the rash, even though it wasn't a bullseye rash, it was a spreading rash and the way it had spread. So she said that's Lyme disease. And since I have a very bad intolerance for antibiotics, which is usually the first step, I really discussed what I could take. And I didn't want to take something for a long period of time. So I did take a short dose of very strong antibiotics. And then I started researching as much as I could. And within probably less, I got in touch with one of my mentors, one of my teachers, and she directed me to Timothy Lee Scott of Dragon Botanicals. And I got what they call an herbal protocol and put myself on that right away. But what I realized after all the symptoms, reading all the symptoms, I'm almost 99% positive I had Lyme disease before I was diagnosed with it, before I got that tick bite, because of all the symptoms. It was like, oh my God, this is what I've been living with for the past 10 years.
Wow.
So much so that a lot, since I've been on the herbal protocols, which we can get into, I did for the first 6, 7, 8 months, I suffered from chronic fatigue. I would get up in the morning and I knew I wouldn't make it through the day without going to bed for the afternoon. So I would get up, force myself to do what I had to do, and then go back to bed for the afternoon.
Once again, that parallels with mercury poisoning.
So I just like total fatigue. But I noticed that during that time, I also felt an unstable dizziness, which I had before. A lot of that started to, over time and being on the protocol, a lot of my symptoms that I even had before diagnosis started clearing up.
That was when you were taking the herbal protocol?
Yes, but I do notice that in times of stress, that things can flare up again. And I've been taking the herbal protocol for 2 years now, but I've lowered my dose, but there are times where I have to increase the dose. Some people cannot, I think because I had it before my diagnosis, that is something that I will probably live with. It will be something that I'll have to keep in check with the herbs. But some people can take the herbs for 3 months and they have no relapses.
We'll be right back with Joyce Wheeler and It's Your Life.
Do you have jars of expensive beauty care products that just didn't do what they claimed? Many women are just like you, spending big bucks on products that do not give results. At Heavenly Bodies, their products do what they say. Why? Because they use only certified organic plant-based ingredients, which have been used by women for thousands of years. Heavenly Bodies believes every woman deserves to have quality skincare products at affordable prices that work. To purchase your Heavenly Bodies products, visit their website at hborganicskincare.com.
We're back with Joyce Wheeler and It's Your Life.
So how soon after a bite would they have to do that?
As soon as possible, I would get myself on the herbal protocol. If you know you have been bitten by a tick, whether regards you have a rash or not, I would do the herbal protocol.
Just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, because like I said, I'm 99% positive from the symptoms that I had Lyme disease before I was diagnosed. Especially if you live in a high-risk area and you're an outdoors type person.
Right, so get on the protocol, even just to be on the safe side, even if you don't.
And there's nothing that's going to hurt you. I mean, they can be, with any herbs, there can be side effects, but do your research,
So Heidi, there's something called the 6 steps of healing. Could you please talk to us about the 6 steps of healing?
Sure. Actually, the 6 steps of healing is something that was created by Susan Weed. And I think it is so very important to us. And it's something that I really, really believe in. So the first step is to do nothing. So in other words, check in with your body. What's going on? Sometimes we do so much in our daily lives that we get stressed out. Sometimes we just need rest. If we can't stay awake during the day or something, we just may need rest. We may need to nourishment. And these steps don't have to go in order, but this is just an idea to really get down to what's going on. One of the biggest things we can do is pay attention to our bodies. Is something different going on? Is this something I've had in the past? Is this something normal for me? Or is this something that's different? Knowing our body's wisdom is so important.
I agree.
The next step is collecting information.
Well, I'm sorry. Let me ask you about the first step. How long should somebody just do nothing?
Well, like I said, these are just steps and they can be done all at once. So it's knowing your body's wisdom, knowing if it's something that's happened in the past that will tend to go away, or is it something different that's really not normal for you? If it's something that's not normal, then you definitely want to go on to the next step right away. If it's something that you've had before and you know will pass with time, then you're probably okay not to move on to the next step.
But we're gonna go back to what you had said, that this doesn't necessarily relate to Lyme disease, because as you said before, if you know you've been bit by a tick, you should go ahead and do the protocol that we're going to talk about shortly.
Right. And you most likely want to go see the doctor too. It's always, like, as a herbalist, it's always good to have a diagnosis, because then you know what you're working with. And so the next step along with that is collecting information. And that's part of that, is seeing the doctor and collecting information. Low-tech diagnosis, support groups, books. Knowledge is power is what Susan Weed quotes. That's something we all know. The more you find out about it, the more you can take action. And especially we're talking about Lyme disease. If you know you've been bit by a tick, the first step is to see a doctor. Second step, even if you, sometimes it's hard to get an appointment, you got several days before that appointment, I would be getting some information. I would be getting out there, getting as much information as I can. And then we go on step 2, which is engage the energy. That's more your holistic approach. So that's why these steps can be done all at once too. That's more in line of thinking of, okay, spirituality. Do you have a meditative practice? What calms you down? What's your center? Where's your peace? I call it your peace. Always coming back to that peace within, not getting so fearful, like, oh no, I can't handle this. So that's also affirmation. That's laughter. So that's kind of really what I think she's really speaking about, and what I'm thinking about is really being present with your body and really being present in what calms you down. And then we go on to step 3, which is to nourish and tonify. And hopefully you're doing nourishing and tonifying already. So it's not something that you've got to go out and add, that you're using herbal infusions, you're exercising, you're making good food choices, you get massage on the occasion, you get exercise. So this is something you are already doing, is steps 2 and 3. It's something you should already be doing in your life.
Right.
And then we go on to step 4, which is stimulate and sedate. And this is basically engaging in stronger herbs, engaging in stronger protocols. It may be getting into acupuncture. It may be taking herbal tinctures. And kind of 4 and 5 kind of go together, I would say, where you may use supplements. And what she says, and what I totally agree with, supplements are not herbs. Anything you go into a pharmacy to purchase off the counter is not an herb. They're in pill form. They're not an herb. And you might go into using drugs and antibiotics, so to speak. Antibiotics are so openly used that I don't think, in all honesty, that they do much good for Lyme disease, because of the way that's a whole nother show we could do about the overuse of antibiotics. But they are so overused that I don't see how they really can work. And what they can do is just short term. It's not long term. And what happens is many people take antibiotics and they're fine for a while, and then they have a relapse because these stealthy microbes, they can't get at it. So that's what happened. And then the last one, which you wouldn't necessarily get into in Lyme disease, is she calls break and enter. And that would be having surgery. That would be chemotherapy. That would be really strong drugs. And this is such a good model for everybody, I think, is the 6 steps of the healing. You can find this online if it's something you want to look into, because it gives you a roadmap into your health. And it's not saying don't use Western medical intervention. Take it one step at a time. See if there are other ways without going to the extremes.
First, you talked so much about antibiotics. Are there not herbs or something more natural we can use as an antibiotic that is not so invasive to the body?
Garlic.
Garlic?
Garlic is nature's antibiotic, basically. Incorporating garlic into your diet is one of the best things you can do. And there's so many different ways to incorporate that into your diet.
Well, then we shouldn't have a problem over here because it's actually a food group in our house.
Ah, there you go. And of course, echinacea. I'm sure most people anybody that's probably listening to this podcast has heard of echinacea purpurea. That's a really good one too, that fights off the common ailments that people unfortunately rush to the doctor for, like the common cold.
Oh, geez.
But your garlic and echinacea can help you through the common cold or even the flu, Now,
what about oil of oregano? That's what we use.
I do. Another thing we've talked about, which oil of oregano is essentially essential oil.
No, it's not an essential oil.
It's a high concentrate.
It is a high concentrate. We get
it's
it
highly concentrated, and so to me that makes it like it's essential oil, which I do not recommend ingesting.
Well, and I totally agree with you. No, the oregano oil that we're getting, it's in a gel cap.
Wow.
And it's not an essential oil.
I can't tell people what to take and not what to take, what they should be taking. I can only speak from my experience and what I believe. It's something I would not take. It would depend on the situation. I would not just randomly take something like that. I'd have to do my research, and it would depend on the situation. Would it be better for me than a prescription? What effects does it have on my body? Would it be worth it to eliminate what I'm trying to eliminate?
Well, from the research that I had done on it, it's still like antibiotics is going to disrupt the gut microbiome, but with with an antibiotic, it's going to take 2 years to get that gut microbiome back in check. Where with the oil of oregano, it doesn't deplete it so bad that it's going to take 2 years to get it back.
But this is nothing that I would recommend for Lyme disease. So
just wondering about that. So let's go into this protocol that you've been talking about.
Sure. Okay, Joyce. Yes, the protocol I am taking. Let me tell you what books that I recommend. I recommend Healing Lyme by William Rawls, MD. This book is written so well, and he's an MD that contracted Lyme disease. So this book is easy for everyday people to read. If you're more scientifically inclined and you have a background in Latin, or even if you don't, I recommend Healing Lyme by Stephen Harold Buchner. A lot of great information, uses a lot of Latin, not that great for the everyday person. I can get around it kind of because I'm a herbalist. And the last book I want to recommend, and this is why I preface it this way, is Invasive Plant Medicine by Timothy Scott. And I recommend Invasive Plant Medicine for anybody listening to this podcast. I think it should be in every single household in America. Everybody should read this book, Invasive Plant Medicine by Timothy Scott. So that ties into my protocol that I am taking because it is made by Timothy Scott. And he's a Northeastern herbalist who contracted Lyme disease. And when you are sick and you can't go out and gather your own medicine, you want somebody that has experienced the same thing you have and has already made a protocol for himself that worked and is selling it. So what the most number one, the best defense we have against Lyme disease is called Japanese knotweed. That's in the protocol I'm taking. It's called LB Protocol, LB Core Protocol, and it's by his company. It's called Green Dragon Botanicals. You can find it on the web. And besides the Japanese knotweed, it includes cat's claw, endographis, sarsaparilla, and dandelion.
So how is that taken? Are you combining all these ingredients like into a tea and drinking it?
This is in a protocol, so it's already pre-made. It comes in tincture form, and he also sells it in pill form. I went for the tincture form because I'm not all into pill form. I don't think your body accepts it as easily in pill form. And I have trouble swallowing large pills. So it was a no-brainer for me to go with the tincture form. So it's already pre-made.
Okay, what is his website?
Green Dragon Botanicals.
Is that a .com or?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, if not, they can just Google it.
Do a Google search and it will come out. It's out of Brattleboro, Vermont. If you want, I can talk a little bit about each of the herbs.
Oh, please do.
That are in these and what they do. The Japanese knotweed is considered invasive, and that's why I recommend his book, Invasive Plant Medicine, because a lot of our invasive that everybody wants to go out and kill with toxic ways are some of the best herbs that we have for healing. So Japanese knotweed is one of them. It will hold a hillside together. Its root system is very tenacious. So it really digs down into the soil and goes really deep. And this characteristic is what makes it really great in the body, because it really digs down and it goes into those places in the body and really weeds out those microorganisms that like to hide and be stealthy. It's an anti-inflammatory. It is loaded with resveratrol, which has been all the rage of the latest health craze. It's loaded with that. So it's loaded with all these wonderful healing properties. So it is an antioxidant. It's an antimicrobial. It's anti-cancer. It's good for neurological diseases. It's good for wound healing. And it's even good for removing plaque and tartar buildup for your teeth. It's really a great herb that is underutilized. So that's one of them. And then there's endographis, which is a Chinese herb. And that is also an anti-inflammatory, antiviral, antioxidant, immune boosting. And it's been in Chinese medicine for a long time. And then we have cat's claw, which a lot of people use, which is an Amazonian plant. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's good for the digestion. It's good for viral infections. It's good for stimulating the immune system, and it helps fight viruses. Sarsaparilla is good for rheumatoid arthritis. It's a great antifungal. It has been used for syphilis and leprosy, and it's good for skin diseases. Then we have one of my favorites is dandelion. I would love to do away with Roundup because they go after dandelion every spring, and I hate it. Dandelion is one of our best herbs for our liver. It is cleansing for that. It helps with waste products. It's just a really good all-around herb. One of my favorites.
That's great information, Heidi. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, we're at the top of the hour, so if people want to get in touch with you, where can they go to do that, and what can they expect to find at your website?
Well, the easiest thing is go to my website. It is www.lyme wildcolorcauldron.com. And on that, there is a link to my YouTube and my Patreon page. YouTube is Wild Feather, and my Patreon is Wild's Color Cauldron. Patreon is where I do videos, podcasts, and writing about herbs. That's where you can learn about herbs, and it's really inexpensive, just basically a donation, and you will be able to get all the information.
Excellent. Great. Well, Heidi, it's been wonderful having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You've been listening to It's Your Life. I'm your host, Joyce Wheeler, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are.
This has been a production of Natural Bliss Podcast for a better quality of life.